Don't encourage them, he snapped at his teenage son, who rummaged in his pocket for change to give the beggar outside the underground station. You're not helping, just feeding his habit. Probably catch something just by handing over your hard-earned cash, too. He eyed the stinking bundle of rags with suspicion as he tapped a cigarette out of its packet, then looked away and lit it, forming a tent with his hands to shelter the lighter's flame from the guttering gusts of autumn wind. He closed one eye against the stinging of the smoke as a red glow caught and nibbled at the filter paper. Behind him, watery eyes bore into him from behind the cardboard sign, "Homeless and hungry, please help." Phil grabbed his boy's elbow and propelled him away, intent on putting as much distance as possible between his only child and the street scum littering the pavement. He changed the subject, making sure his son understood the importance of making a good impression and not letting the side down. The fly that settled on the back of his neck warranted no more of his attention than the filthy beggar they left behind. It was just slapped away and forgotten, but not before biting the tender, open-pored flesh just above his collar. Later that afternoon, father and son made their way across the square. The boy's head hung low, despondent, as Phil jabbed at him with angry words, berating him for failing to win a place at the prestigious school he had set his sights on. John bit back his words, knowing they would find no welcome, and stared at the ground before him. We never saw the beggar, slumped like a deflated sentry at the station entrance, watching the subterranean slowly swallow them as they rolled down the escalator to the platforms. They never saw his minute nod across the concourse to a grossly fat, red-cheeked woman in 2 big carpet slippers secured with string, pushing a trolley filled with the plastic supermarket bags, nor did they notice when she whistled down the steps to a young, wasted man lolling against a column. A low rumble and a gust of stale air heralded the arrival of the train. Phil pushed his way into the carriage, sneering in disgust as he brushed against the dead-eyed, unwashed youth that stepped aboard with his boy. His hand shot out and grabbed John's wrist as he saw him reaching for his pocket for a few coins that might buy a sandwich or hot coffee. "I told you before. Isn't it about time you started listening to me?" he barked. John shrugged an apology to the parchment-skinned junkie and glared at his father's angry back, wondering where that black mark on the nape of his neck had came from. 3 a.m. Phil's eyes snapped open in panic, frantically looking into the black before him, trying to make sense of the nightmare images of the endless brick-lined tunnels that had shattered his sleep. He waited for his vision to adjust to the darkness, but it remained impenetrable, oppressive. A solid weight sat on his chest, and he reached a hand out to dislodge Jet, his wife's black cat, or witch's familiar as he liked to call it. But he felt no warm, dark fur with a beating heart beneath it, just a pool of icy cold darkness that seemed to swallow his hand. As he stretched his jowls to shave the next morning, Phil's eyes were drawn to a mark on his neck, reaching dark fingers around from the back. After a momentary flash of dread, he put words like melanoma out of his mind, splashed on some aftershave, and fastened his collar and tie just a little bit tighter than normal before heading out the door for his morning commute. On the train he enjoyed more breathing space than usual, his fellow passengers giving him a wide berth. Not that it bothered him. Better for him not to be rammed up against some scroungers, losers, and filthy foreigners scattered through the wagon, heaving with commuters. It didn't occur to him that the black mark reaching around his larynx or his waxy, ochre-tinged skin might have something to do with it. The train lurched to a halt between stations. Suppressed groans of annoyance floated above the passengers as they waited for it to start moving. It didn't. Instead, the lights blinked out, plunging the carriage into darkness. The faint glow of a dozen mobile phone screens bounced off the windows and penetrated the gloom beyond. Grimy brick walls looked back at the commuters. Phil shuddered, shrugging off vague memories of his nightmare and trying to harness his racing pulse. His hand strayed to the back of his neck, nervously playing with the source of the stain that now slowly but surely was spreading. Unknown to him, a new spot was rapidly forming on his left cheekbone. The light flickered back on and the train creaked back into motion. Passengers exchanged looks of annoyances and tutted at the ceiling. Phil drew a juddering breath and exhaled with a shaky wheeze, clutching at the upright pole for support. At the next stop, the train spilled out its load of city wage slaves, Phil among them. He shifted his briefcase to the other hand and held tight onto the handrail of the escalator, heading upwards to ground level, emerging in the morning light with a gasp to be greeted by a wide, toothless grin from the beggar in his usual spot at the entrance. He looked Phil in the eye, winked theatrically, and raised his dirt-ingrained fingers to his temple in a mocking salute. The workday passed like any other. From his cubicle, Phil worked methodically through the pile of outgoing cases, correcting the mistakes of his inept and ingrates he had to work with, never leaving his desk to make small talk at the water cooler or coo over some idiot's latest batch of sickening baby photos. His coat felt unusually heavy as he shrugged it on after dropping the last file into his outbox and turning off the lights. His eyes burned, and a cold sweat played on his brow. Probably coming down with a fever from one of those lowlifes on the train, he thought. Stepping out into the evening drizzle, he took care not to slip on the slick pavement, and made his way to the station. The rain plastered his hair to his head, sending rivulets down his temples. He was tired. Oh, so tired. His vision swam, and he grabbed the rail on the steps down the station. Struggling for breath, he would have cheered if he had the strength. Coming his way, looking the very picture of wholesome youth, was John, arm in arm with some copy-paste girl from his crowd. He reached out a hand to appeal to his son for help, but the boy looked straight through him, not recognizing his father beneath the rapid decay his day had wrought. "Don't feel sorry for them," he told the girl on his arm. "My dad's right. It's all a scam. He probably would have picked my pocket if I'd let him get close enough." Defeated, Phil made his painful way down the steps to the platform. It was packed full of damp, steaming commuters. Seeking somewhere to rest, he inched to the furthest end and leant against the cracked tiles, waiting for the train. It wasn't due for another 12 minutes. He let out a ragged sigh and closed his weary eyes. A wave of unwashed body odor flowed past, and a soft shushing noise aroused him. He opened his eyes to see the obese bag lady standing next to him in her ill-fitted carpet slippers, looking straight at him, smiling and beckoning for him to follow her. Once she was sure that she had his attention, she turned and maneuvered her bulk past the little gate separating the platform from the tunnel beyond. Phil watched in bemusement as she was swallowed by the darkness, then followed. It was like stepping into his dream. Brick walls, slimy with something unmentionable, and an undefinable miasma of something damp, cold, rancid, but very much alive washed over him. He felt no dread. He let the soft, sweet darkness engulf him as he realized that this was where his life had led him all along. Years of blaming others, condemning outsiders, laying the faults of the world at the feet of outcasts had paved his way in life. Now, at last, he had changed lanes. This was his journey's end.